So I understand Jesus as a pre-existent spirit son of God, as one of the sons of God. In fact, the Son of God, but certainly one of the sons of God mentioned in Genesis 6, Deuteronomy 32 in the Dead Sea Scrolls, the book of Job, and in Proverbs 30. In verses 4 and 5, texts that refer to ascending and descending, referring explicitly to God and his name, and in the Hebrew, the name of his son. Now, in the Greek, it says name of his sons. Either way, this idea of sonship, which I believe Jesus builds upon in his response to the Jews in John 10, is something very clearly taught in the Bible. When we see angels, for example, these sons of God in the Old Testament, taking on human form. So that's not what I believe the Bible teaches about Jesus. When angels took human form in the Old Testament, we're not told exactly, how they do that or the mechanics that are involved in the metaphysical to physical transfer, but they do it. It's explicit that they appear as humans, they eat, and then they can dematerialize, or however you want to describe it, but they're not born as a human being, right? In the New Testament, I believe it teaches that Jesus actually existed as a spirit son of God, as in the form of a God or God. Philippians 2. We can talk about it more in a minute. But just to define the view so it's clear what I'm saying is possible, right? You want to know, how is this possible? Well, first, let me explain what I believe is possible or happened. So you had a spirit son of God like the angels. They can take human form. But in this case, one of those sons of God, the Son of God, completely destroys himself. That's what the verb kanao means in Philippians 2. Existing in the form of a God or God, and destroyed himself and took on the form of a man. When he was born through Mary, I believe he literally was created as a human being. So, for example, he didn't know who he was when he was an infant. He didn't know who he was until he got a little older. That's why Philippians 2 says, 2, 7, and 8, when he realized he was in the form of a man, he became obedient as far as that. It uses a verb, eurisco, that means find out. Very anti-Trinitarian because they believe he was always God, never stopped being God. But if you have to find out, if you have to realize you're a man, then at some point you didn't know that. Of course, they had the whole dual nature thing, but either way. So I believe he completely died, not die, right? So he didn't die in the sense that he was killed as a spirit. Philippians 2 says he emptied himself. Pale too. The reflexive personal pronoun that means that's the object of the emptying, himself. So he destroyed himself and was born as a man and lived as a man. And as a man, the body that God prepared and that he helped prepare to prepare him for this, to be the last Adam sacrifice in our view. So when he was destroyed and became born as a man, he didn't realize who he was until later. Exactly when that was is debatable. But Philippians 2 says when he found out, when he realized he was in the appearance of a man, he decided to be obedient. He didn't rebel. He didn't take advantage of it. Now, Socinians want to say, well, that's what that means. But that's after he emptied himself of being in the form of a god, which they take as like this functional divine royalty as a man. But if that's the case, then why would he have to take the form of a man or become a man? They focus on slave there, but it says a man also. But if he was already a man and just functionally God, why would it then have to say he becomes a man? Just say he becomes a slave. So it's very important that Socinians and others understand that the Bible teaches Jesus was destroyed as a spirit. He did it to himself and then born as a man. Same person. And again, how that actually works, right? So there's not like two persons like Trinitarians think. Some Socinians seem to think there's like not enough room in a human to have this pre-existent person. Well, he didn't even realize who he was until later. He's literally a man, perfect, sinless, because of God and the line he prepared through to Mary. So this whole purpose was spoken about in Eden in response to Satan. So Socinians like to say, well, that's, yeah, right. It's all for ordaining stuff. But the same Socinians will admit there's a difference, a huge difference between foreordaining and pre-existing. So yes, when it's talking about things that will happen in the future, that's foreordination. But when it's talking about existing in a certain state and then taking on another state, there's no foreordination there. There's just existential idea is being expressed. That's how I believe it was possible. He literally destroyed himself in the spirit and was born through Mary because of God as man. Then, when he died as a man, he was completely dead in the spirit and in the flesh. That's why Galatians 1:1 says the Father raised him up from the dead. But he says in John 2:19 through 21, break down this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up, referring to his body. So he died and trusted his spirit to the Father, and the Father resurrected him and gave him a new body, in which state 1 Peter 3 says he went and preached to other spirits. I don't see a problem. I just see these different existences that the firstborn Son of God uniquely takes and or is given in the case of the resurrection. It's not a question of being possible or impossible. It's what he chose to do. It's what God made happen, and he did it.